Hello again. The accusation has been levelled at me that I moan about the state of Britain without offering any practical suggestions for how matters might be improved. The reason that I seldom do so is really quite simple. It is this. Everybody knows what needs to be done, but nobody dares do it for fear of international condemnation. Personally, I think that an absurd excuse for allowing this country to be overrun with mad and dangerous foreigners, and I shall explain why. The reason that we allow all the illegal immigrants to enter Britain via the Channel and do not turn them back or simply deport them immediately to France is that we have acceded to the United Nations 1951 Refugee Convention and also to the 1967 protocol attached to it. This means that we promise not to refuse admission to any stray foreigners who say that they have been persecuted for their religion, ethnicity, political beliefs and so on, or who have left their own countries due to war. Of course, I might observe at this point that when this country has been at war and the civilian population dying in tens of thousands and the cities of our country devastated, as happened during the Second World War, the natural instinct of Britain's healthy young men was not to run away and hide in somebody else's country. It was to fight for their nation and to protect their women and children. But there, I suppose that's an old-fashioned perspective these days. I mention this because over 75% of the refugees and asylum seekers crossing the English Channel are men aged between 18 and 39. The sort one would expect to be fighting in wars rather than showing the white feather, but there you are. Foreigners do tend to have different values in such matters from us, I've noticed. Anyway, having signed this treaty, or acceded to it, to use the technical expression, we must let these people in and consider each of their pleas on its own merits. In the description to this video, I give a link to the United Nations website setting out Britain's obligation under the 1951 Refugee Convention. Now, here is an interesting point. A lot of countries have refused to touch this convention with the proverbial barge pole. Neither India nor Pakistan have signed up to it, neither have Indonesia, Malaysia or Bangladesh. Hardly any countries in the Middle East other than Israel, Egypt and Yemen acceded to the convention. Countries like Jordan and Lebanon, which are always banging on about refugees, haven't signed it. Neither has Libya. You see, it's perfectly okay not to take part in this game. Hardly anybody even knows which countries are signatories and which are not. But wait, I seem to hear you say, surely countries in the West like Britain and America sign up to these United Nations conventions as a matter of course. Wouldn't it look really awful if Britain was not signed up to a major convention like that? Not a bit of it. Take the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, which is essentially a human rights treaty guaranteeing certain rights to children. 196 of the countries belonging to the United Nations have ratified this treaty. Only one country in the entire world refuses to ratify it. Which country? Well, that would be the United States. The reasons don't matter, although believe it or not, home education has something to do with it. The fact is that America refuses to sign up to it. Nobody cares, and hardly anybody even knows about this refusal to sign up to that convention. If Britain withdrew from the 1951 Refugees Convention and joined India and Cuba and the rest of those countries, then Britain would be able to get to grips with the problem of all those people swarming across the Channel. So far this year, 10,000 people have entered the country by this route, more than twice as many as came here in the same period last year. It might cause a few raised eyebrows for a week or two, but in 6 months nobody would even think about it, in just the way that nobody knows or cares that the United States has not ratified the Convention on the Rights of the Child. I say all this not because I think for a moment that Britain will withdraw from the 1951 Refugee Convention, but more to point out that we could do so if we wanted, and it would be a 9-day wonder. Once we had done this, we could simply decide for ourselves how we were going to deal with bogus refugees and asylum seekers, and perhaps we could come up with a better solution than sending a boat out into international waters to collect them and then bringing them back to this country, lodging them in 4-star hotels and bringing them breakfast in bed. This then is one practical step which could be taken to begin with. There are others, but to avoid ending up in a row with the United Nations, this is the one thing which would need to be done before all the other things which I shall suggest in subsequent videos.